Well, hey there, Crossroads. One of the greatest reversals I've noticed from this COVID-19 season hasn't just been, on the economy. I mean, that set us back a few years, maybe. Yeah, sure, that's bad. But the scariest trend I've been seeing is bandanas covering people's faces. See, this hasn't been mainstream since the Wild West, people. I mean, sure, some people use them in their hair as an accessory or to signal which gang you're in. Sure, yeah. But unless you're a cowboy or a bank robber, this isn't a look I think we need to bring back. I'm walking through the store and I'm more worried about, I'm about to be in the middle of a stick up than contracting coronavirus. I can't imagine the added stress for some people working cash registers right now. Someone walks up to the register and what you're expecting is someone to say, raise a gun and say, give me all your money, but instead they hand you a credit card and say, take all my money. That's a great reversal indeed. Yeah. And sure, I mean, plus it's hard to breathe in. My goodness. That's probably the point. Now, what I've just said is pretty much idiotic, but here's a real truth about a great reversal that's been happening during our recent daily dwell readings. And it's something I've been noticing through the book of Acts. I'm sure you have as well. Because if you were with us and you read through the Gospel of Matthew, or any of the Gospels really, if you're reading those recently, you'll notice that it doesn't really end super well for Peter. He's not really made out to be much in a very good light towards the end there. I mean, he's challenging Jesus. He's fallen asleep on the job. He's denying him 3 times. But now we get to see the rest of the story after Jesus' resurrection, his ascension. We come to Acts chapter 2, and we see that the disciples are filled with the Holy Spirit, and now we see a whole new group of men. And Peter's sermon on the day of Pentecost, it was powerful. Lots and lots of people were saved. But it's followed up with even more amazing moments, and that's what we've been reading the last few days. So Acts chapter 3, Peter and John, they're going to the temple. They heal a beggar who couldn't walk for 40 years, couldn't walk since birth. And here he gives another knockout sermon where Peter's just giving all the glory to Jesus, making much of him. Then he's taken in front of the authorities. And remember, these are the same men that just had Jesus put to death. These are the same men that he and the other disciples were just in hiding, fearing for their lives. And he's brought before them to basically give an account for what he'd been doing. And what does he do? He calls them out directly and boldly proclaims Jesus and his lordship to their faces. And then there's Ananias and Sapphira, and that's just a weird story there in chapter 5, but powerful, bold movement of the Holy Spirit and Peter in that moment. So then we get this little summation at the end of today's reading in chapter 5, where many more signs and wonders were being done by them, to the point where people were just bringing in the sick people and just laying them out in the street so that, hoping that Peter's shadow would pass over them and they'd be healed, right? Like, what a reversal. What a change in this man's life. And the question is, of course, how could that have happened? How did this happen? And what happened to Peter, obviously that we saw back in Acts 2, he's filled with the Holy Spirit. Okay, in a powerful way, in a way that hadn't happened before. And how was he able to speak with such boldness? He was filled with the Holy Spirit. And how was he speaking boldly? How did he receive that? It's pretty clear in chapter 4, verse 29, and the verses around it. They were asking for that. They were praying for that. He prayed for it. The other believers were praying for help. See, none of this was about Peter. It wasn't his power, his ability, his wisdom. No, every time he opens his mouth, he's no longer concerned about making himself great or trying to be the greatest in the kingdom, all that stuff. Every word out of his mouth at this point was about Jesus, making much of him. Look back and read some of those sermons again. He gives praise to Jesus. He calls him these amazing things throughout all of them. He loves Jesus. He's making much of Jesus at every opportunity. And so I think as I've been reading through this and seeing this change in his life, I think if a lot of time we're looking at it saying, well, what's this for me? How can I see that kind of change in my life? If we want to see a reversal, a big reversal in some aspect of our lives, if we want to see real change in my heart, if I want to see real change in the community I live in my family, whatever it might be, we would do really well to start here. And that's to ask for the Holy Spirit to empower us for God's mission, and to pray constantly, consistently for boldness, for help often, and to make much of Jesus at every opportunity, every word out of our mouth. How can we make much of Jesus to the people around us? That's, I think, a great place for us to start, especially in this time of a lot of uncertainty and a lot of hopelessness in the world. And so that's kind of what I've been getting out of the reading the last couple of days in the book of Acts. I'm curious to hear what you guys have been getting out of it. Hope you've been encouraged by it as well, and looking forward to seeing the next step in the story. All right, talk to you guys later.